Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I do appreciate that. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you have a question about the video, if you have a suggestion for a video, or if you want to tell me how you do things, or just want to say hi, all of those things are great. Feel free to leave a comment if you'd like. So every once in a while I do a video where I do a series of different kinds of bails because changing up your bail on a pendant is one of the ways you can kind of make it stand out. And sometimes you have a really beautiful stone and you don't want to do a lot of decoration around the stone itself, but you want to add a little flair to it in some way. So having a fancy bail can sometimes be a way to do that. So I'm going to show you 5 different kinds of bails you could do. And as always, there's multiple variations on these, and there's probably an infinite number of kinds of bails you could make. So we're going to do 5 today, and I'm curious to see which ones you like the best. Let me know in the comments which one you like the best. So, all right, before we get started, I need to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and they're a fabulous group of people who I really appreciate. Thank you for all of your support, and thank you for making it such a nice environment over there. I do appreciate that. My YouTube subscribers, we just passed 19,000 subscribers, which is amazing. I can't believe that. Thanks also to you guys for all of the nice comments. It's really good to hear when people are getting something useful out of these, so thanks for that. And also thank you for the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. Those things really help to reduce my materials costs a little bit. So, all right, well, let's get started on these 5 different bails. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on my merch store. This particular one has a nice convenient chart that converts fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I use all the time, and since I've kind of gone millimeters mostly. It also has this nice grid pattern in it that allows you to sketch out things a little more easily. I am not good at freehand drawing, so having a little grid in the background helps me to keep things sort of symmetrical. Okay, so let's find today's project. Some of the other ones on the merch store have different charts. There's one for American wire gauge to millimeters and inches. That's kind of useful sometimes. Alright, so I got 5 different bail designs here. This one I'm going to call a nose bail just because it kind of looks like a nose sticking down there. It's going to be basically a 22 gauge piece of sheet made into a tube, cut at angles, and then I'm going to solder on a little bit of 18 or 16 gauge. I put 18, but I may use 16. I'm not sure. We'll see how it looks. The second one is going to be kind of like my standard bail that I do, except I almost never stamp things, so I thought I'd do a stamped bail today and see how it looks. It'd be kind of a fun experiment. I'm going to use 22 gauge for this as well. I have 3 or 4 stamps over there, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to use, but I think probably the star-shaped one like that. We'll see. I've done a lot of tube bails in the past. I'm going to do kind of a double tube one that's sort of elaborate here, with a bit of 14 gauge round coming off and maybe a 14 or 16 gauge jump ring there to hook your pendant onto. This one was, I have this little bit of, sometimes I find little bits of things I made before and I can incorporate them into something else. And this is one of those situations. I made this copper and silver woven rings a while back. If you're interested in that video, it's kind of a good video. Check that out. This is a piece that was left over from it, and it's just sitting there not being used, so I might as well make a bail out of it. And I'm just going to make kind of a teardrop shaped bail from the side view. I'm not very good at drawing this kind of complex pattern, so that's my poor attempt at sketching that. But it's going to be just simple and kind of but give it a little flair, I think, because it's got a texture to it because of the weaving. And then finally, I pre-made a little bezel for a carnelian here. And I think it's about a 6 millimeter. I didn't really measure it, but it looks about 6 millimeters, maybe 7. And I'm going to call this a P hook because it's going to rest down in the crook of this hook here, and these are just going to wrap around into a double loop. And on the back, I'm going to put a little hidden loop, probably out of 18 gauge wire, maybe 16. I don't know yet. So, well, we're going to start with this one. I pre-made a couple of tubes. If you want to see how to make tubes, they're pretty easy to make. I'll put a link to a video I did a while back up there too. So I think I did 4 or 5 tubes. I wanted like 4.5mm tubes, I think. And if I remember right, I multiplied it times pi. It came out to be about 14.5, which rounded out makes a tube about that big. Let's see if we got close. It's closer to 5.5, but that's close enough. All right, so basically what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to take my saw and cut it at an angle like that. So we'll go over and do a little sawing now. It's kind of messy over here. I tried to hide everything that was really messy so you couldn't see it. We're just going to get this started here. I'm probably not going to get the angle perfect, which is fine. Because I can always use a file if I need for that. Okay, I'll probably neaten that up with a file just a little bit, and then we'll make one of those little kind of nose-shaped things and solder it on. So, like I said, I think I was gonna use 18 for this. I think I might use 16. So, let's do it like this. Let's file the end of this. And then I might want a smaller loop than that even. Well, let's see. We'll make a loop on the end. That's going to be too big, I think. So let's do it a little bit smaller. Use my round nose pliers, or round nose pliers. Make a little loop. That's a little better. Then to curve outwards a little bit and then come back. Kind of like that. I'm going to cut this off a little long. That's pretty close. Cut that guy off. Okay, so if you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder primarily, and I use liquid flux that I dribble on. And my torch is a Silversmith model. It's a acetylene air torch. It draws in atmospheric air through these holes to mix with the gas. And this is a #1 tip that I use primarily. It's a really nice torch. I like it a lot. Okay. See if we can get that soldered on just like that. Well, maybe. That doesn't roll away. Maybe I should put a pin behind it to keep it from rolling too far. That looks pretty centered. So we're just going to put a little bit of solder right up against there. I'm actually going to do pick soldering because it's easier for me to do it that way. If you're interested in pick soldering, I'll put a link up there for you. It's a good way to put little bits of solder right where you want them. So I'll be picking one up on the pick, heating the piece to the soldering temperature after I flux, of course, and then just touching it where I want it to go. The real key is to wait until it's actually up to the right temperature before you jump in there. I get impatient sometimes. I'm going to go ahead and solder these little loops closed as well. And of course, once this is cool and polished and everything, you can just hook your a loop attached to your pendant through that, and then you'll have a nice kind of distinctive looking veil. For number 2, let's find some 22 gauge sheet. We're going to make a little rectangle first. Let's go about 20 millimeters or so, 2 centimeters, right there. And I guess about let's go about 8 centimeters wide, roughly. Flatten this back out a little bit. Let's find the center of the side here. So we want it to taper down kind of to the middle of this side and this side. So we're going to cut diagonal lines along those planes. So like here to here. Here. And then let's round it out a little bit so it's not quite so angular. Alright, let's go over where it's a little more stable and I can stamp really hard. The stamp is a little bit bigger than I expected. I didn't remember it being quite that big, but we're still going to try it and see how it looks. I think I probably need to not break my phone while I do this. I don't know. I kind of like that one. I don't know. Let's try this other one above it. I think at least the front side here will be good. So let's bring that back and make that into a bale shape. When you stamp stuff, it makes it work hardened, so let's anneal it really quick. If you're new to this, that just kind of softens the metal back up. Now I'm just going to take it and bend it around one of these guys. This is a bale making pliers if you're not familiar with these. But I'm bending it into a kind of a teardrop shape. So I gotta get these two ends lined up nice. And then we're just going to solder the end closed. And then normally we would do this, we'd solder this closed after it's through a loop. So maybe I'll just leave it like this for now, in case I want to use it later. That way I can just pop it on and solder it closed. But yeah, just after you run it through a loop, then you'll solder it closed there. So that's our second one, a little stamped bale. And of course, you could, I suppose you could put some letter stamps on there. You wanted to put some initials or some kind of message that you want to send to the world. Okay, so I'm going to cut 2 pieces of this tube for the third one, and they need to be about, I'm going to eyeball it here. Just cut one off each end. How about that? And I'm just going to do the same thing I did a minute ago sawing this, so you probably don't need to watch me. I'll be right back. Okay, I have all the components made here. I got those little tubes that I cut off. And I made a piece of 14 gauge wire that was 27-ish millimeters long. I just kind of eyeballed it. But and I bent it in the middle, and then I made a little jump ring out of 16 gauge round wire, and I'm going to cut a little bit of solder, and we'll solder all this stuff together. I think I might sweat a little bit of solder on each of these wires too. That's where you pre-melt some solder where you want it to be onto one of the pieces. Oops. Now let's see if we can get these lined up nicely. I always try to put the solder seam towards the back, if I can help it. If I look at it like that, I can make a mark here and here. I'm going to take advantage of the pre-existing solder joint on the ring. chain going through there. Okay, that's number 3. Number 4 is going to be simple, I think. And this is just an example of using some stuff you have laying around. So let's straighten this out a little bit. I wonder what would happen if we put it on a jump ring mandrel and flattened it a little bit at the top. Got kind of like a braided bail then. I kind of like how that turned out, actually. Let that pickle and we'll clean it up at the end. Alright, for number 5, here's our little bezel and here's our little carnelian. So I'm going to use some 16 gauge round wire, if I can find where I stuck it. And I think let's cut a piece. I guess we can kind of shape it around this thing and then gauge it from there. So if I have it that long, that should be enough. Probably more than we need. But I want it to have a nice bottom here. So that's pretty similar. Start by making it a U shape like that. You could just set it on top of a couple of pieces of solder right in this area, so it's touching both the bezel and the wire there, if you don't want to pick solder. Now I don't want this too far up. So let's, we'll hold it like this maybe. I'm going to file those just a skosh. One last step, we need to put a little ring on the back. This is called a magnesia block, and it allows you to push stuff in. Let me make sure this is not too big for this. That'll be okay. Okay, so I'm going to sweat a little bit of solder on the end of each of those. The trick with something like this is there's a lot more mass in the piece that I'm soldering this little tiny ring to than there is on this. And also this is kind of pushed into this insulator basically, so I got to focus most of the heat on that. Get those cleaned up and I'll show you the result. Alright, so here's our three bales. Number one's over here. That looks pretty much like what I was shooting for. There's number two, right there. Number three. We want to do a little bit of a flatter ring on the back for this one so it sits better. Number four, which is our, that was actually three, I think. No, that was four. 4 was our copper and silver woven 18 gauge wire. And oh, here's number 3, is this one here. And this is number 4, this is number 5. Don't forget to tell me which one you like best. So this one's 1, this one's 2, this one's 3, this one's 4, and this one's 5. So, alright, well, I'll get some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, that was 5 different bales. I hope you enjoyed that video. Make sure, if you haven't seen the other bale videos, there's a playlist over on my main page called Findings, and all of those videos should be on that playlist if you're interested in seeing the other ones. But either way, peruse my channel page there. I have lots of content, over 450 videos now, so there's lots to choose from, and you're almost certain to find something else interesting. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel, so do that, and then hit the bell if you want notifications. I put out a video on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays each week. So the other thing is, check the video description down below. There's some important links. There's a link to where you can get those design idea sketchbooks that I showed you at the beginning. I find them very useful and a great way to keep track of your projects. There's a link to my ebook, my most recent one, and you can get yourself a copy of that if you click on that link. It's a valuable guide to all of 2024's tutorial videos, including some additional information about each one, and a link right to the video. It's a great value, and it's a great way to support my channel, so get yourself a book. Finally, there's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that community. That's one of my favorite groups of people over there, and there's a super nice batch of people who have a whole lot of knowledge and are willing to share it. So check that out if you're interested, and then make sure to come back again. Thank you for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.